Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Will. With the acting career of Brendan Fraser having a resurgence, you gotta wonder, what else could come back? Well, we've got some news for you. In this video, we're gonna talk about the revival of the Brendan Fraser Mummy franchise. Let's get to it.
It's been more than 2 decades, but the sands of time are finally turning. We have just recently gotten the news that Universal Pictures seems to have officially greenlit a brand new Mummy movie. It doesn't just stop at that. We've got Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz reuniting for this one, and trust me, fans of the original classic trilogy, myself included, can hardly believe it. Now, this announcement has been the talk of the town in Hollywood as well as on social media. With all of this said already, let me tell you, there's still a lot more to unpack. So, buckle up and join me on this ride as I bring to you everything we know so far about the next chapter in the Mummy franchise. Without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Here we go. Alright, as far as the talks go, Universal Pictures has chosen May 19, 2028 as the release date. On to the other details now, and let's start with the obvious. Rick O'Connell and Evelyn Carnahan O'Connell are back. Yep, you heard that right. Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz are set to return in what would be a much anticipated reunion the fans have been begging for ever since Weisz exited the franchise after The Mummy Returns. Brendan Fraser appeared in all 3 original films, but he clearly never seemed fully committed to the 3rd one. He has been candid about that, and his recent comments even suggest that he has been waiting for 2 whole decades to tell the story he always wanted to tell. But Rachel Weisz's return is just as important. Keep in mind that she turned down the 3rd installment, The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, due to her concerns with the script, as well as being unwilling to portray a middle-aged mother's role during that stage of her career. That seemed like her parting away for her character from the franchise. But here we are, well, more than 20 years after she first stepped into the role of the brilliant yet clumsily Evelyn Carnahan O'Connell. Another thing to note is how elevated the careers of the 2 leads have become since both of them are now Academy Award winners, Fraser for The Whale, and Weisz for The Constant Gardener. So, as a result, this return to the Mummy franchise just gets us even more excited. The details on the rest of the cast are pretty much under wraps or undecided yet, but since some reports have suggested that this upcoming movie will ignore the 3rd film, we can hope for some more familiar faces and even some cameos from the first 2 films of the franchise. On to the directing duties now, and they fall upon Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, who are collectively known as Radio Silence. We know those names sound familiar, well, because they are single-handedly responsible for reviving a much-loved horror franchise named Scream. Yes, you heard that right. After taking over the Scream series with their 5th and 6th installments, they have clearly proved that they could very well honor the legacy of a franchise while also bringing in some fresh energy as well as some scares. The duo also directed the vampire heist film called Abigail, and this showcased their talent in blending horror, humor, and gore, all within the studio's monster universe. Now, Radio Silence did not come on board to this new Mummy project lightly. In a recent interview with Empire, Tyler Gillett went on to admit that their bar for jumping into another franchise is quite high. So, if you remember the original Mummy movies, they were much more than just horror films. They felt like romantic adventures with high-stakes drama, as well as comedy. So I'm sure Radio Silence seems to understand the assignment and gear up to maintain that balance. The lead credit for the screenplay of this film goes to David Coggeshall, whose filmography includes the likes of Orphan, First Kill, and The Family Plan. I get that these 2 movies might seem like an odd pairing at first glance, but you see, Coggeshall has been able to demonstrate his range, from twisted horror prequels to action comedy sequels. He simply confirmed his involvement on social media with a post that read, "Cat's out of the bag, I guess. What is in those pages he has written the story on is still classified information." But it is clear that Coggeshall, along with Radio Silence, is working really hard to keep surprises with themselves until the right moment arrives. Along with those 2 departments assuring us quality, we also have a bunch of producers attached to this project that seem really reassuring to us fans. For starters, we have Sean Daniel, who produced the original 3 Mummy films along with his late partner, James Jacks, while also producing the 2017 Tom Cruise reboot. With his return, we can hope for some continuity in the storyline as he knows what worked in the original films and what did not. To work alongside him are producers William Sherrack, James Vanderbilt, and Paul Neinstein from Project X Entertainment, all of whom I hope have developed a trusted relationship with Radio Silence, considering their recent collaboration on the recent Scream films and Abigail. Even Brendan Fraser has his name attached as an executive producer, with Hive Mind's Jason F. Brown and Dennis Stewart. This means that Fraser will have some creative input that goes beyond his performance, and it's key since this was something he felt disconnected from in the third film. All of this makes us wonder what they have in store for us in a narrative sense. While we do know that Universal, as well as the makers, have been pretty tight-lipped about this, we also have some really strong clues regarding the plot of the upcoming Mummy film. As mentioned earlier, the new Mummy movie will overlook the events of The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor altogether, The Hollywood Reporter writes, and instead of that, it will act as a direct sequel to The Mummy Returns, which means that the film will ignore the recasting of Evelyn with Maria Bello, as well as the subplot that involved Rick and Evie's adult son, Alex. By resetting the timeline to follow the second film, we can hope the filmmakers bring back Rachel Weisz's character to fit right into the new narrative. Now, where does that leave Rick and Evie, one might wonder? Well, you see, at the end of The Mummy Returns, the O'Connells survived the collapse of the pyramid, saved their son, and escaped a certain death. So the film ends on a hopeful note, with the family walking away from another adventure. There was no cliffhanger as such. This gives Coggeshall and Radio Silence a totally blank canvas. Here they can age the characters as per their needs and just have them land into a new adventure without worrying much about the third film. Now, along with this, we even have Brendan Fraser himself, who has dropped really important hints. In an interview with the Associated Press, he said that one particular mummy story he wanted to make was never made. He also went on to call the third film a product of corporate synergy, which also puts things into perspective when you consider that NBC held Olympic broadcasting rights and wanted to shoot in China. Then there's also a single lingering thread from Tomb of the Dragon in the post-credits scene, which teased mummies in Peru. We know that this new film is ignoring the events of that movie, so this tease is now irrelevant. However, it is also possible that the filmmakers take this location without carrying over the continuity, because a South American setting offers a fresh adventure and newer threats for our two leads. Another possibility when it comes to the location is a return to Egypt. Bringing Rick and Evie back to where it all began would be truly poetic. But regardless of the setting, the core premise will very much involve the classic premise, with the O'Connells facing an ancient evil that is resurrected by greed or ambition, just like old times. We know the official information is not much as of now, which is exactly why the rumor trains have been working overtime. Of course, there are theories. One of them says that the new film will feature the return of Imhotep. Arnold Vosloo played the iconic villain in the first two films, so the fans didn't hesitate in pointing out that the Mummy franchise has never been shy about resurrecting its villains, and that this could be real news too. Another rumor suggests that the film will introduce a brand new mummy, which is not tied to Egyptian or Chinese lore. Considering Radio Silence and David Coggeshall's experience with horror storytelling, it could be possible that they will create an original antagonist. This could also help the film to stand on its own while also honoring the legacy of the franchise. Some fans have also murmured about the return of Alex O'Connell, the son of Rick and Evie, who was originally played by Freddie Both in The Mummy Returns and Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. So if the new film is truly ignoring the third installment completely, then it is unclear how they could portray Alex. However, the focus seems to be mainly on Fraser and Weisz, and from the looks of it, the story would mainly just revolve around these two, with the producers choosing to keep the spotlight as such. With all this said, we can't ignore an unavoidable topic surrounding this franchise. Yes, it's the 2017 reboot, starring Tom Cruise and directed by Alex Kurtzman. That was a film that really wanted to kickstart the so-called Dark Universe from Universal Studios. This was supposed to be a shared cinematic universe consisting of classic monsters. This film featured Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll, Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man, and Javier Bardem as Frankenstein's monster. In spite of the film grossing well over $400 million worldwide, its bloated budget made it a financial failure. Along with that, it was slammed by critics and also rejected by the fans of the original Mummy films, who claimed the film missed the adventurous spirit that the trilogy perfected. But the failure of the Dark Universe cast a shadow over any revival attempts of The Mummy. But then, in came Brendan Fraser's remarkable resurgence in his career, along with Rachel Weisz's status as an Oscar winner and Radio Silence's proven track record. All of these convinced the studio to run it all back one more time. Interestingly, in April 2026, Warner Bros. And New Line Cinema will release Lee Cronin's The Mummy, which is an unrelated horror film starring Jack Rayner and Laia Costa. This project is a separate entity and is said to be a darker reimagining by the director of Evil Dead Rise. Arriving 2 years before the Fraser Wise sequel, the two films are not connected in any way. However, it is unusual for two major Mummy movies to be in development simultaneously at different studios, but this just reflects the massive appeal of the original Mummy trilogy. All that said, it would be easy to dismiss The Mummy 4 as just another nostalgia bait. And it is fair to say that, since Hollywood has spent the past decade trying to revive every franchise from Ghostbusters to Indiana Jones. But this feels different. Brendan Fraser has gotten emotional about his 20-year wait to make the Mummy film he always wanted to make. Rachel Weisz, who walked away from the series even when it was at its commercial peak, decided to return. Even Radio Silence passed on other franchise opportunities to wait for a project that felt special. Sean Daniel, in his 70s, is returning to produce a film series he helped build from the ground up. This is why it matters and makes this revival so much different from the others. It's probably the last dance of Rick and Evie's characters. The upcoming Mummy film is to remind the audience why these characters, after all of these years, have stayed so beloved in the first place. And that is our video for today. We hope you had a great time as we covered the first round of major news regarding the much anticipated upcoming installment in the Mummy franchise, starring the original leads Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. With a release date set for May 2028, we can only, as of now, patiently wait for a first glimpse of the film, earliest by the end of this year, on which I'll be the first to report for you, right here. Now, as always, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, share it with your friends, and comment your thoughts on this upcoming film. Until next time, take care and ciao!